You believe your financial decisions are yours. Most of them were made for you before you noticed. The brain does not evaluate money in isolation. It evaluates money in context. And the context is the people standing closest to you. What you consider expensive, reasonable, indulgent, or reckless is not a fixed measurement. It is a moving average calculated from the financial behavior visible in your immediate environment. This calibration runs continuously. It does not ask permission, and it does not announce itself. Before you choose what to spend, your nervous system has already decided what counts as normal. The decision you experience as choice is downstream of an estimate the brain made silently, using the people around you as the dataset. This is the central claim. Financial behavior is transmitted through proximity before it is ever chosen. You do not select your spending baseline through analysis. You absorb it through exposure. When the people in your visual and social range begin spending differently, your sense of what is reasonable shifts to match them. The shift feels internal. The cause is external. A figure that felt extravagant 6 months ago can feel ordinary now, with no change in your income, your goals, or your circumstances. Only the surrounding behavior changed. What changed was not your values. What changed was the reference frame your brain uses to decide what your values should be. The recalibration is not a flaw. It is a feature of how the human brain navigates uncertainty. Money decisions are uncertain. The brain handles uncertainty by looking at what others in similar situations are doing and treating their behavior as evidence of what is appropriate. This worked when humans lived in small, stable groups where everyone faced similar resource conditions. It fails quietly in modern environments, where your visible peer group may be drawn from radically different financial realities. Your brain still treats their behavior as data. It does not adjust for the fact that the data is incomplete. You see the spending. You do not see the inheritance, the credit line, the second income, the parental subsidy, or the willingness to carry debt that you would never tolerate. What you absorb is the surface. What you calibrate against is partial information presented as a complete picture. The result is that your sense of what is normal drifts, and you do not notice the drift, because the drift is happening to your sense of normal itself. You are not deciding what to spend. You are deciding how close to stay to a baseline that was never yours. This is why moving cities, switching jobs, or changing friend groups often produces a financial transformation that no budgeting tool ever achieved. The inputs changed, so the outputs changed, and the person experiences this as personal growth or personal decline. It was neither. It was recalibration. The same individual, placed in a different proximity field, will produce different financial behavior and will feel that the new behavior reflects who they truly are. Both versions feel authentic. Both are responses to environment. What feels like taste is mostly position. The mechanism becomes harder to detect the longer the exposure continues. Initial exposure to a new peer group produces friction, because the gap between observed behavior and internal baseline is visible. The friction fades. It does not fade because you resolved the gap consciously. It fades because the baseline shifted to match what you were seeing. Once the baseline has shifted, the behavior feels native. There is nothing left to push against, because there is nothing left that feels foreign. The recalibration applies in both directions. Proximity to people who spend cautiously will quietly lower your sense of what is necessary. Proximity to people who spend expansively will quietly raise it. Neither direction requires conviction. Neither requires conversation. Neither requires you to know it is happening. The cost is not only financial. The cost is that you lose access to the question of what you would have wanted in the absence of the input. That question becomes unanswerable. The version of you that existed before the recalibration is no longer reachable, because the recalibration changed the instrument you would use to evaluate it. You cannot detect the shift from inside the shifted state. The new baseline feels like the only baseline. This is why financial decisions, examined later, often seem inexplicable. The person who made them was operating from a reference frame that no longer exists, and the current self cannot reconstruct why those numbers felt acceptable. They felt acceptable because, at the time, they were normal. Normal was set by the room, not by the person. Every figure you treat as reasonable, expensive, generous, or excessive was set by exposure before it was ratified by thought. The decisions feel autonomous because the recalibration happened beneath the threshold of awareness. The inputs were not chosen. The outputs feel chosen. This is the asymmetry. The mechanism that shapes financial behavior operates upstream of the self that believes it is making the decision. You will continue to experience your spending as an expression of who you are. It is, in part, an expression of who you have been near. The person you are financially is not separate from the room you have been standing in. Want to see the hidden rules shaping money, power, and human behavior? Subscribe to Unseen Forces.